In this tutorial, we're going to look at setting up automatic bank feeds or automatic imports. An automatic bank feed is where transactions get from your bank all the way through into your RentHQ account almost by magic. They just appear there without any sort of manual or human intervention. They just appear every day in your RentHQ account. There's a number of steps that need to be set up for this to work, and these are the steps here. So I'll just quickly go through the first few steps before we go into the last one. First of all, you need a RentHQ account, which you've probably already got, but if you don't have one, you can go to the renthq.net website and choose the Get Started menu option to create your own account. The next thing you need is a Xero account. Now, for bank feeds to work, the transactions actually go from your bank through to Xero, and then from Xero they go through to RentHQ. So it's a two-step process. The transactions go from your bank to Xero, and then from Xero to RentHQ. So you'll need to get a Xero account. So to do that, go to the xero.com website and you can get your own free account there, your free trial account. There is an additional charge for this software. This is an online accounting platform which enables you to download transactions from multiple different banks. You might want to go to their website and check which banks they actually support. They don't do all banks or all financial institutions, but they do a lot of them. Next, you need to get the bank feeds into Xero. Again, go to the xero.com website and they have heaps of information there about how to get transactions out of your bank into Xero. Once you've created your trial account, it's actually quite easy to get those bank feeds set up. The fourth thing we need to do is we need to link our RentHQ account through to Xero. That's the transactions that have gone from our bank into Xero, we can then link to Xero to get those transactions out of Xero into RentHQ. If you go to the RentHQ website, there's information on how to create that link. You can go to support and choose Xero integration, and that has information there about how to link to your Xero account. Basically, you just need to click the Connect to Xero button. There is also a video tutorial called Connecting to Xero, which will show you how to create that link. It's relatively easy. So once the link is created, then we set up our automatic imports, and that's what I'm going to go through in this tutorial now. So assuming everything else is set up, we can now go to Functions, Options, and to the Xero tab. If I haven't connected to Xero yet, that button there will say Connect to Xero, but because I'm already connected to Xero, it now says Disconnect from Xero. And down here is where we set up our automatic imports. So we tick the box to say I want to automatically import my transactions from Xero, and then I choose how often I want to do it. So let's say I want to do it every day, and I'm going to choose to do it at 9 AM. Now, a word of caution on the time: don't do it too early in the day. You need to give time for the banks to process their transactions into Xero before we try to grab them back out of Xero again. If we process too early, then we'll miss those transactions because they won't have appeared yet. The xero.com website has information about what time of day different banks do their processing. So I know the banks that I'm dealing with finish their processing by 8 o'clock, so I'm going to do my processing at 9 o'clock. Down here there's an option which says automatically create the transactions which have matching rules. That means automatically all the transactions that come down from Xero, if we have a matching import rule, automatically create transactions in my cash book. My suggestion initially is to leave this turned off while we review the process and make sure everything's working correctly. Make sure your rules are matching correctly, because once we create those transactions, if they're not being generated correctly, we could be generating incorrect transactions. If you leave this option turned off, what it will do is it will send an email to the email address that you specify down here, and it will tell you what the importing processing was going to do, but it won't actually create the transactions. Once we're happy that everything is working correctly, we can come back and we can turn this option on, and all those transactions will now go into our cash book. but without turning this on, the transactions are pending. So let's just save that. Now let's assume that I've already got some transactions that have come down from Xero in an overnight process. So I can go to here and I can choose the import statement menu option. And this will show the transactions that have already come down from Xero but haven't been processed yet. You can see there's two transactions that are white. That's because those transactions have already matched one of my rules. If I tick that option which says automatically import the transactions into the cash book, those transactions would have already appeared in my cash book and won't appear on this screen. It's like if I push the commit button now, these two white transactions will get processed and they will appear in my cash book. But the transactions that were in red remain here until I actually deal with them. So what can we do with these red transactions? You'll notice there's two transactions which are almost identical. The only difference is they're on a different date. But I can set up a rule for these transactions. So I can say add a rule, give the rule a name, and it says if the note contains this phrase and if the reference contains this phrase, this is what I want to do with this transaction. So I can say apply it to this property. I want to specify that it's rent, and I want it to specify that the rent belongs to this tenant here. And I can save that rule and I can reapply those rules. You'll now notice that now both of these transactions are in red because they both match that same rule that I just created. But sometimes not all transactions are recurring transactions. We don't have to always create a rule. Like this one here, we've done some office repairs. I don't expect this to be a recurring transaction. It's a one-off transaction, so I can manually just fix this transaction, specify a property, and maybe I can say it's a miscellaneous expenses. And that one's now also ready to import. So I'll just push the commit button and those transactions are now all imported into my cash book as well. So the key thing here is to get the rules right. Once all the rules are set up and working correctly, the import process there'll be almost no work at all to do every day when those transactions are imported. We only need to manually deal with the one or two transactions that aren't recurring and don't have a matching rule. So that shows you the steps required to set up an automatic import.